Hey everybody, it's Sean Casemore here with NGen. We are about a minute or so after the hour. We're going to get started in another 2 minutes. Just want to give everybody time. We have several people joining us, so just want to give them a few minutes to hop on, and then we'll continue. So just stay tuned another couple minutes and we will get started. All right, and if you're just joining us, 1 more minute, we're going to get started. Just giving a few folks a chance to log in. So 1 more minute and we will get started. All right, everybody, just wanted to get us started here for today. It's a couple minutes after the hour. My name is Sean Casemore. I'll be your moderator here today with NGen, and looking forward to our presentation today from Wendy on Cybersecurity 101 for manufacturers. Now, a couple things to mention before we get started. First off, if you haven't heard from me, and you probably will at some point, I wanted to bring your attention to a program that NGen's been running for some time that you may or may not be aware of. We call it the AMP Up program. And the AMP Up program really is something you'll find on our website. If you go to ngen.ca/upskilling, you're going to find all sorts of details there. We have 44 different programs. All programs are geared towards the upskilling of manufacturing employees. And those programs in and of themselves are meant to allow you to continue to upskill, obviously, and advance your manufacturing. Now, what's key here is part of the AMP Up program, all the different organizations that offer these different trainings and different certification or certificate programs, we've worked with them, and what we're able to do is cover half the price of those programs for you so that you can actually invest in training your people and spend a lot less money. So if you'd like to visit the website, ngen.ca/upskill, you can see a list of those programs. And if you decide to progress or move ahead with any of these, what you can actually do is sign up through us. We'll connect you directly with the partner. And if approved, and it's a pretty straightforward process, you'll be able to get up to 50% of that training covered, okay? Again, ngen.ca/upskilling. Now, last thing I'm going to mention before I turn it over here, as always, following these presentations, if you'd like to continue the dialogue, next Thursday, December 3rd, I can't believe it's December already, at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have a roundtable discussion. Okay, Wendy has said she wants to join us, so she's going to be there, and we're going to continue the dialogue from today's conversation. So it's a great chance to discuss some of these topics with your peers, to understand what they're doing, what you can do differently in order to obviously protect yourself from all the cyber harm that exists today. So watch your email. I'll be sending you some information on that. You can feel free to let me know if you'd like to join, and we'll get you the link. Now, with that said, the last thing I'm going to do here, obviously, before I turn it over, is introduce Wendy young. Now, Wendy's career began over 30 years ago. I was bugging her that she probably got started when she was 5, but nonetheless, Wendy has worked in, or been a business partner in technology, in security and innovation in all the various sectors, from energy, utility, automotive, finance, and transportation. And over the last decade, she's actually been focused on security and driven to bring balance between excellent operations, mitigating risk, and meeting the financial obligations of the business. She's recently worked closely with the Ontario Energy Board Working Group that was instrumental in developing the Ontario Distributor and Non-Bulk Transmitter Cybersecurity Framework, called the Ontario Cybersecurity Framework. So Wendy knows that which of she speaks, and we're really looking forward to her presentation here today. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy. The last thing I'm going to mention is, if you have questions, we will stop twice during the presentation. So use the Q&A. You should see a little Q&A button at the bottom of your page there. If you go down, you'll see it. You can click in there, enter any question you have at any time, and when we get to those points, I'm going to read your question live. Okay, so thank you very much, Wendy. I'll turn it over to you. Great, thanks a lot, Sean. I do have just a couple of slides this morning talking about NGen. Yeah, sorry. So manufacturing is being disrupted all around the world. There's intense competition, personalized customer expectations, stringent regulatory environments, rapid advances in technology, and Canadian manufacturing is well positioned to take advantage of these new opportunities. And NGen, Next Generation Manufacturing Canada, leads Canada's advanced manufacturing supercluster. We're committed to building world-leading advanced manufacturing capabilities in Canada, supporting and strengthening collaboration across Canada's advanced manufacturing system, supporting skills development, as Sean mentioned, with the AMP Up program and advanced manufacturing management capabilities, and co-investing in collaborative industry-led projects that have a potential to create unique competitive advantages for Canadian manufacturing. We've been in business for about 2 years, and we're seeing some real encouraging results. Just some of the highlights of our impact so far: we have 60 approved projects with a total project value of $230 million, and we have 963 real jobs directly supported by the projects. If you want to find some more information about our impact, it is available on our site at ngen.ca. So, risks facing Canadian manufacturers in today's cyber world. I've listed 4 of them. These are our top lists, but Industry 4.0 is driving the change and setting the stage for smart manufacturing to adopt faster than ever before. And as automation becomes more integrated, the cybersecurity risks have become an increased imperative for manufacturing. It's now, it has been for quite a few years, the top 10 on a lot of the boards. Questions around cybersecurity come up all the time, and now this is becoming very important for manufacturing due to this Industry 4.0. So some of the major risks to manufacturing are, kind of looking at that shift to remote work, and it's seen a substantial rise of cyber attacks due to increased phishing, ransomware, business email compromise. The global cyber incidents like WannaCry and other ransomware attacks have hit manufacturers very hard, causing major disruptions to the supply chain. And now with COVID-19 disrupting business process, the lack of oversight of equipment used at home is increasing the risk for cyber attack. It's estimated that over 50% of businesses in Canada, their users are now using home personal equipment due to COVID-19. So together with the increase in the new device plug and play for Industry 4.0 and the lack of security standards, manufacturers are likely to become targets. It's really important for us to kind of strike that balance, like everything in business, the balance between acceptable risk and the cost of mitigation strategies for the business to move forward. We want to smart and secure manufacturing, and we want to be able to build security by design. So I picked out top 4 strategies. There's a lot written on the subject of cybersecurity.
Experts are learning at a slower speed than the threat actors. We're constantly running to keep up with them. But I wanted to talk about these 4 strategies today that can help your organization understand the risks and apply some mitigation. So by no means are these the only ones, but it's a good start. The most important thing, first step, is implementing an incident management. So the incident management life cycle involves all the actions taken prior to an incident. That's all the testing and planning during an incident and then after an incident occurs. The good response plan can provide an effective means of addressing the situation in such a way that it minimizes the impact of the enterprise. So during this planning stage, you're going to define who your team is. That's important. Who's the team in your organization that is going to be on the incident management? Conduct a business impact analysis. Make sure your business continuity plans are defined, the requirements, and ensure that your recovery plans are ready to implement. During the incident itself, you've got your team defined. That's the team that's going to start doing the triage and investigate what the incident is. And there are different levels of incident, from something very simple, it's just a small issue with one machine, as opposed to ransomware, which has shut down the whole system. You're going to contain that exposure. You're going to know who to contact, and then you're going to know what to inform to those contact people. Knowing who to contact in your plan is one of the most important things for the incident, because during the incident, you don't want to be running around trying to figure out who am I going to contact. And there's a whole list that I could go through, but I would say number 1 on that is legal. That's your first people that you want to contact. During the recovery process, you've got your business continuity plans that you've already put into place. They now go into play, because while you're trying to recover, you need business continuity plans. How are you going to continue your business? Then you're going to start your restoration activities. You're going to communicate to the business what is critical and what is happening, and you're going to start restoring systems. The last step of an incident management plan is that lessons learned. If you don't do this step, your next incident, you're not going to be able to move forward. Review the incident. Have all the controls been put into place? What could we have done different to stop the incident? These are important questions that you really need to ask your organization to reduce the number of incidents. And I always say this is first, because you will have an incident of some sort, whether it's a cyber incident or something that is in your production plant floor. So absolutely, incident management, the very first step. So while you're looking at your incident management plan, one of the things that you are going to want to look at, a good second strategy, is knowing what your assets are. So what's important to your organization? Data that resides on all of the IT and the OT systems at rest, in transit, in use. Could be your intellectual property. It could be customer information, PII, personal identifiable information. Your people. What knowledge do your employees bring to the organization? Have they developed business processes? Do they have unique knowledge to your organization? Are they key players in the organization to ensuring that the business thrives? And looking at your facilities. This is your physical facilities. Do you have critical production systems that need protecting? Unattended office spaces. So during this COVID, we all have this. There's a lot of organizations that are now all working from home. Is there anything that was left in that office space that could be at risk now? Once you understand what your assets are, it's understand also how they're accessed. Is it technology, VPNs? Is it shop floor reporting, PLC programming, email and communication? How is that information, how is that asset being accessed? People, third parties, what third parties are working with your organization? What employees, what access do they have? And customers, do you have customers that come in and out of your facility on a regular basis, checking the production? And your processes. Your supply chain. I know a couple of people have mentioned that supply chain is very critical to them. Absolutely. Your process for how you're working with your supply chain, your third-party connected systems. How is all of that asset accessed within your business? Once you understand what your assets are, how you're going to, how they're accessed, your protection is your third step. And this is one of the most important things. If anyone has ever seen NIST, it's identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. I turn it around a little bit and I say, you want to have a response plan first, but we do need to protect. There's, we'll hear a little bit later from the CCCS, but they've identified also some very important things, very top of mind for data and systems. Automatic patching of operating systems and applications, ensuring that your backups and your encryption services are in place. From your people, document your business processes. Cybersecurity awareness training is always a really good thing for employees. Make sure you also, when you're doing your training, make sure they also understand what it is that they're protecting and they understand what assets that they need to protect. And then using the use of strong authentication, multi-factor authentication for systems, especially in a time where we're not in the office, we're all working remote, we're working in the cloud. Your facilities, providing physical security cameras, controlled access with cards and biometrics. These are all very basic, but again, the most important ones for your data and your systems is patching operating systems, patch, patch, patch. Make sure it's an automatic patching, and then ensure that you do have a backup and encryption of your data. It helps to reduce the possibility of a breach. The last one that I've put on here is training. So awareness training, it can come in many forms. It could be electronic. There's a number of companies out there that do provide cybersecurity training modules that are pretty easy to use and at a low cost. Electronic or peer awareness. So at NGen, we do have on our staff meetings, we have talks about cybersecurity, updating on what it is that we're doing to protect our environment and any new risks that have popped up. It's really important for that peer-to-peer talking about cybersecurity and that awareness. So awareness training provides the recognition of a security issue. If they don't know what the issue is, they don't know how to be a part of the solution to protect. Garnering interest in the training that you provide, it helps with engagement and learning. There's a lot of new cybersecurity applications that are gamification applications. Maybe that's something that some of your employees would be more interested in, and they'd be more engaged in the learning, providing that interest. As your company matures, employees can make the decision to follow best practice, and they make that as a decision. That's a decision of theirs. And this is the motivation to adopt behavior. They're now not just listening to awareness, they're making the decision to be part of that adoption of the behavior. And then finally, the action. The employee action to integrate the new behaviors, and security becomes the new norm. And these are the not necessarily steps in the training, but this is how you evolve where security becomes the new norm in your organization. So again, top 4 strategies. Define your incident response plan. You will need it. I don't pretend that I will never get hit with some kind of an incident, no matter what company I'm working for. So you will need an incident response plan. We will be providing the deck and the presentation for you. Go back through, take a look at the response plan, incident response life cycle, and see where your organization fits in. It doesn't have to be really a difficult task. It doesn't need to take months and months. Sometimes it can take just a couple of hours to write down and make sure that you know what's going to happen when you have an incident. Knowing your assets, what's important to your organization. I find this one of the most important things because you don't want to spend money on things that are not that important. So you need to understand what are those assets that you're trying to protect. Protecting your assets, applying the appropriate controls. Again, this is making sure that you're applying the appropriate controls to the assets, depending on whether it's electronic, it's people, it's physical facilities. You need to understand that and know what you need to do to protect that. And then training your employees. Always include an understanding of the assets that you're trying to protect. This is very important for your employees to understand how they fit into the solution with the awareness training. So I have run through this a little fast. I did want to leave a little bit more time for our guest. So we do have a guest today. I'd like to introduce Lindsay McDonald of the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity to speak about what they're doing for Canadian industries and how they can help. So Lindsay, I'll put it over to you.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you to everybody for inviting the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity to speak here with you today. First of all, can you hear me, Wendy?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, and is my video on?
Yes, you're good. We can see you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, perfect. So I'm actually joined here today with my colleague, Alex Perouse, and we are going to be tag teaming this presentation. First and foremost, I do have road work going on right outside my window. So if the jackhammer starts to go again, I might have to hand it over to Alex a little bit sooner than later. But it is a pleasure to be with you here today. I'll let Alex introduce himself when he pops in to talk about some slides, but my role at the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity is I am the partnership lead for both the health and the academic sector. So what does that mean? It means that my job involves ensuring that the Cyber Centre is providing cybersecurity advice, guidance, and services out to critical infrastructure partners within the health and the academic sector. So busy times these days, especially with the pandemic and the cybersecurity needs of both of those sectors. So we'll go through a number of these slides fairly quickly, but I wanted to include them just because I know that sometimes they're used for reference after the presentations. So if you want to skip right to slide number 3, I'm going to talk to you about what the Cyber Centre is. Next slide, please. These are our 2 facilities. Yeah, so the one on the bottom left, that is the Communications Security Establishment headquarters. And the one on the right is the Cyber Centre, which is the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity. The Cyber Centre is a business line of CSE, Communications Security Establishment. And CSE has over 70 years of experience and expertise in providing cybersecurity advice and guidance to the Government of Canada. And it was 2 years ago in October of 2018 that the IT security team within CSE, which is the bubble, the bottom left, we merged with the resources and the functions that were occurring within shared services, SOC, as well as public safety's Cyber Incident Response Center. So 2 years ago, all those cybersecurity resources and services amalgamated into what is known today as the Cyber Centre. So what are we? We are Canada's authority on cybersecurity and the single source of expert advice, guidance, services, and support from the Government of Canada. So if you go to Environment Canada for weather, you go to Health Canada for food guide, you would come to the Cyber Centre for cybersecurity questions. Next slide, please. Prior to August of 2019, we operated under the National Defence Act, which only allowed us to provide our cybersecurity services to Government of Canada organizations. Back last summer in August of 2019, the CSE Act was passed, which for the first time allowed us to reach out into the private industry and Canadians at large and provide cybersecurity advice and guidance. So really exciting for us that we've actually just for the past year been able to engage with private industry such as yourselves. Next slide talks about who our partners are. So we work with external partners. Of course, we have a big partnership with law enforcement, such as the RCMP, to work through some cybercrime issues. And we also support Canadians at large. Next slide is our vision, which is to have a secure digital Canada. I'm not sure why these slides are all showing up with a dark blue background, but on my screen, they're white. And our mission is threefold, and that is to safeguard Canada's assets, our data, our information, and our intellectual property with advanced cyber capabilities. We also want to provide cyber advice, guidance to help inform partners of cyber threats and the cyber threat landscape that's changing all the time. And the third pillar of our mission is to empower others to strengthen their own cybersecurity through collaboration and partnerships. Next slide. Last week on November 18th, the Cyber Center released the National Cyber Threat Assessment 2020. The first one was published back in December of 2018. And the link is in this presentation later on. I encourage you to go and have a look at it. It's a public report, and it's based on both classified information and unclassified sources. And it identifies current trends in the cyber threat environment across the country. Three quick facts that the report identifies. It notes that the number of cyber threat actors is increasing and they're becoming more sophisticated. The second one is that cybercrime will continue to be the cyber threat most likely to affect Canadians and critical infrastructure owners and operators, and that ransomware attacks will almost certainly continue to target enterprises and critical infrastructure providers. And the third quick fact is that state-sponsored cyber programs from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea pose the greatest strategic threats to Canada and will almost certainly continue to attempt to steal Canadian intellectual property, especially that related to COVID-19 vaccine development. So what is the ground truth really? And what are we seeing from inside the Cyber Center? Well, I can tell you as the lead of the health and the academic sectors, right now, both of those sectors are a major target for cyber criminals as well as state-sponsored activity. We know that those sectors are being hit hard right now, more than ever, due to COVID-19, with ransomware attacks and phishing campaigns. The criminals, the cyber criminals out there are leveraging the panic that's around the pandemic to entice those in those two sectors to click on malicious links, visit malicious websites, and pay ransoms when data becomes unavailable. The majority of COVID-19 related cybercrime has been quite sophisticated over the past 8 months. We also know that there's a huge interest by state-sponsored threat actors to access Canadian intellectual property related to the vaccine development. We see it every day. We see compromises every day. So it really is imperative that we do all we can to help raise the cyber maturity across the variety of sectors that we support. So again, thank you so much for being with us here today. If you jump to slide 9, what we want to do is just spend a few minutes going over some of our services that we offer at the Cyber Center. And I will comment that these services are all free because we are a federal organization. So that's the great news. So what we're going to talk about today is 5 different things that are out there to help support you in developing your cyber resiliency. You can leverage our advice and guidance. You can complete a cyber assessment. You can subscribe to some of our alerts. you can leverage some of our cyber defense tools, and you can join our community calls. So I'll talk about the first one, and then I'll hand the floor over to Alex Perus to discuss the next one, and then we'll kind of flip back and forth. So the next slide, again, is how to leverage our cybersecurity advice and guidance. Well, we have an external facing website with a ton of publications. The ones in this slide I pulled together because I thought they were most relevant to small, medium organizations and how to protect yourself from cyber threat. The top two, you'll see the reference for the National Cyber Threat Assessment that I spoke about earlier, and you'll see a bulletin there, which is, it was produced in April of 2020. And it's a cyber threat bulletin, which basically discussed the impact of COVID-19 on cyber threat activity. So those are two really good ones. The next chunk is implementing cybersecurity in your organization. The first, I'll draw your attention to the first link there, which is called Baseline Security Controls for Small Medium Organizations. I think if you go through there, you will find an excellent list of baseline controls that you should really all be considering to implement within your organizations. And then the last chunk of references there are publications that are all related to COVID-19. The next slide is just an example of what some of those publications look like. So I'll skip over that and we'll go to the next way that we can support you. And I'll hand the floor over to Alex Perus.
Alex, are you there? You have to unmute yourself. Okay, Lindsay, it doesn't sound like Alex is able to unmute or join us. Are you able to continue?
Yeah, I can continue. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I just texted him on another app to see if he is alive. So I will continue. The next way that we can support you is through a cybersecurity assessment tool. So if you go to the next slide, what this is, oh, do we have Alex?
I'm finally able to join you. I'm very sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Okay. We can. You're on then, Alex.
Wow. Hello, world. Very happy to meet all of you. I'm the manager responsible for engagement with, among others, the manufacturing sector. So I'm very excited for the opportunity to talk to you today. As Lindsay was mentioning, what is the Canadian Cyber Survey tool? It is a joint product between our agency and public safety, the Department of Public Safety. And we've wanted to work together because we have complementary and one of the there's a lot of solutions that are available out there, and it's important for us in the government to do our part to provide you consolidated advice that you feel confident about. The Canadian Cybersecurity tool is meant to answer a need in our cybersecurity assessment ecosystem. Public safety historically has a large number of assessments that they were already using. Some of you may have made use of them before under the Regional Resilience Assessment Program. However, the assessment can be complex and sometimes time-consuming. And we wanted to have a way to quickly gauge an organization's advancement in its cybersecurity journey and be able to give that organization very quick feedback on where it is relative to its peers and where it is relative to all respondents to the tool. And I will say thus far, it's been a big success. It's been first trialed in the health sector, which Lindsay supports in our organization, but it's now being trialed in the water sector, as well as in some provinces across all major municipalities. And the more data we have, the better and more insightful the reporting you responded, because you can really see who you are in your sector in regards to all sectors. So what is the tool per se? It's an online self-paced tool. And our goal was really to have something that would take you 30 to 45 minutes to fill and did not require a heavy technical background. One of the things we are well aware of is that many small businesses won't have a dedicated cyber person or a dedicated IC security person, and that's perfectly fine. But we still wanted you to be able to use that tool and have its insight. So if you go through the tool, essentially, it will ask you a series of questions, give you a series of pre-drafted answers for you to choose from, and basically from that you will get a sense of where you're at in 6 specific domains of cybersecurity. Wendy mentioned the importance of asset management. Well, asset management and controls management is one of the domains, for example. She also mentioned the importance of incident management. That is another domain. So that gives you a sense of what your strengths and weaknesses can be. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, this is an example of, oh, sorry, the one before, with the pretty graphs. Excellent. This is an example of the results that you will get out of this. On the left-hand side, for example, we see what the average maturity in terms of cybersecurity posture has been in the health sector. And for us, as a government organization that's trying to evolve and launch new programs, this information is invaluable because it tells us where we can have the biggest single effect by working with your sector. For example, we see here that on the configuration and change management aspect of things, there are some more advanced things that could have been done. On the right-hand side, you see what the score that would be sent to you would look like, given your organization's answers compared to your sector's overall answers. And you can see here that that organization, for example, was fairly weak in some of the questions in the middle. That's helpful for that organization to start considering next steps. What do I want to do this year with my cybersecurity? And help us help you by working on those steps in particular. If that's something that interests you as a service, I'm the contact person, and you can get in touch with either me or Lindsay, and my information is back there. I hope to hear from you on this tool, and I'll talk to you a bit more again later. Lindsay, back to you.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so we've talked about leveraging our advice and guidance products on our external facing website. We've talked about leveraging the Canadian Cybersecurity Assessment Tool, where within 30 to 45 minutes of doing an online self-assessment, you'll be able to identify some of your major gaps across programmatic resiliency as well as technical resiliency domains. The third thing here that you can do is you can subscribe to a number of our a number of different generic alerts. So not specific to your particular industry, but just generic alerts that we send out. And I think for the next, the rest of the presentation, if there's one thing to walk away with, that is, please, please, please reach out to either Alex or myself, or the contact center, which is contact@cyber.gc.ca, if you want any of these services, because we are your contacts and we're your link to get them. So I'll quickly go over 3 types of products that can get emailed out to you. So the next slide shows what we call alerts. Alerts are basically just a notification emailed to you indicating a new vulnerability that we've become aware of. Those vulnerabilities could be in different software products, different applications, different frameworks, different control systems. Whenever we become aware of a new vulnerability, an alert will get out. Next slide. These are called cyber flashes. These have a little bit more a time criticality to them, in that what we've seen at the Cyber Center is a threat actor actively exploiting a vulnerability. And if that's the case, a cyber flash will get sent out to you directly. And in that flash, you will get a summary of what the scenario is all about, details of the mitigation, as well as indicators of compromise that you could potentially use in your defensive systems if you have them. The third one, next slide down, are what we call weekly technical reports. Again, if you sign up for these, every Friday you will get a report emailed to you. They cover all the cyber incidents and the cyber activity that we have seen at the Cyber Center that week across all of our 16 critical infrastructure sectors. So not just manufacturing, but you'll see what we've seen across the health sector, across telecom, across finance, the banks, as well as what we've seen in the government of Canada, which is always lots and lots of stuff. At the end of this report are all the indicators of compromise that, again, you can utilize and ingest those into your defensive systems. So those three products, although not specific to the manufacturing sector, will give you a really good appreciation for the changing cyber threat landscape out there. And I encourage you all to at least get in touch with contact@cyber.gc.ca to start the process of obtaining those services. If you go to the next slide, this one talks about some additional services that are more defensive tools that are specific to your organization, and I'll cover them very quickly. The next one, if you go to the next slide, this is called our National Cyber Threat Notification System, NCTNS. And this is a service where we combine and coordinate data from a number of third-party feeds, intelligence feeds, and we notify your organization via an email if we detect any signs of compromise or vulnerable services on your external facing IP space. So again, it's not a threat feed, and we're not doing any kind of scanning of your external IP range, but what we're doing is just basically comparing the indicators of compromise that are in these third-party feeds with potential vulnerable services that you have on your external facing IP range. So all you need to do in order to gain access to this is, again, reach out to the contact center or Alex or myself directly. And there's some a little bit of government paperwork to sign, but basically providing us with your IP space, external facing IP space is all that we need. The next slide is the actual our intelligence feed that contains indicators of compromise. So we have a knowledge base on our top secret side of the organization, and it contains information about cyber incidents. And that knowledge base is fed from data that we get from Canadian organizations reporting cyber incidents to us every day. It contains information from our Five Eye partners and all their cyber incidents that they're seeing across the world, and so on. It also contains information and indicators of compromise that we obtain from the work that we do on the top secret side of the organization. So that data is then shared out to our partners through this IOC feed that we call Aventail. And you can receive that in two formats, either STIX Taxi or MISP. And that would be ingested into your MISP server. And then you would compare the logs, your logs with our IOC feed. How do you get access to this? Well, again, you would reach out to us, but this requires your organization signing a non-disclosure agreement with us. Just some more paperwork, but otherwise it's fairly easy to gain access to that. Some organizations, especially some small, medium businesses, don't actually have the IT security infrastructure inside their organizations to take advantage of this particular service. So that's something that you can always have a conversation later on with us. And with that, I'm going to hand the next slide, which is, I think, our fifth and final service that we would like to offer you, over to Alex.
All right, thank you, Lindsay, for doing such an excellent job as always. So basically, Lindsay and I are from a group called Partnerships, and the main mean of action that we have to work with you is through sector tables and what we call sector community calls. And what we like to do is bring like stakeholders in tight-knit communities of trust, where we're able to share more directly with you, often on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, and you are able to share your concerns, requirements, needs with us. We can also sometimes connect those communities with external stakeholders, be they other government departments and the services that they bring, or innovators in the cybersecurity space that can bring solutions to meet your requirements. So right now, we have several of those calls around many of the critical infrastructure sectors. I will be working to set up a call with such a community in the manufacturing sector in the spring, summer time frame of next year. Right now, my efforts are focused on some crown corporations, for example. And as we evolve towards manufacturing, I'll be really interested in talking with many of you to see how we can make that community into something that is relevant to you and brings you clear value. Next slide, please. All right, next slide as well. So then we have, I think, a few last slides on some of the more advanced services that we have as well. Be it, some of the malware analysis services that we have. Some of you may have been familiar with malware at CSERC in the past. We have a similar service that we're standing up. That's the kind of thing that through this community of interest, if you should join us in those communities, we'll discuss is actually like how that can best be applied to your needs. So next slide. Okay, we for the next few slides, we've got some key pieces of advice that we thought we'd share with you prior to parting for the day. Okay, what are some of the key issues facing us right now? As you know, working from home, many of us, and Wendy alluded to that, many of us are now using a personal IT or are setting up their own IT in order to be able to continue their work for your businesses from home. So what are some of the risks with that and what can you do? Well, we would recommend that you use corporate devices assigned by your employers, of course, and whenever you can. Why? Because that makes it so much more easy for you to control the baseline configuration, monitor assets, and make sure that essentially the configuration of the machine and the softwares that are on it is something that you're comfortable with and that you feel that you can protect and you're not introducing risk from a third-party device. However, if you should have to use your own devices or let your employees do so, we do have guidance that's referenced here that we think would be helpful for you. Obviously, keep your devices updated. That fits right in with what Wendy said earlier about automatic patching and automatic patch management. I cannot tell you enough how many serious compromises we've seen over the last few years are the result of very well-known, very well-fixed vulnerabilities where an organization simply has not had the time or program to fix those vulnerabilities and has fallen victim to that. Next slide, please. So as a summary, what would we recommend that you do? I'll wait for the next slide. Thank you. A summary of what, nope, the one before. That's right. A summary of the excellent conversations we've had here today. I think, of course, it all starts with understanding your assets. And I think Wendy's point on that was fantastic. Understanding your assets and prioritizing those critical assets can significantly lower your costs to establishing a really top-notch cybersecurity program. You don't have to secure extensively all of your assets, simply those that would be critical to the continuity of your business. For those assets, we would recommend the top big 4 controls that we have developed jointly with the Canadian Bankers Association. They are taken from a larger set of controls that we do recommend for small and medium businesses, but we would definitely suggest that you start here. For those assets you've identified as critical, develop your incident response plan, automatically patch those systems, use strong user authentication, and back up and encrypt your data. Wendy and Lindsay mentioned that some of the biggest threats that we're seeing in the environment right now are ransomware and phishing. Phishing is often used as the vehicle for a ransomware attack. Ransomware will go after your data and increasingly even encrypted data. Just yesterday, I was talking to another manufacturing entity that was sharing with us that their online backups were encrypted by a ransomware actor and that it cost them over $1 million to recover from an attack as recently as October. So securing your data offline on unavailable backups is really one way to go. Using strong user authentication, many of you might have fallen prey to whaling attack where an business email compromise leads to CEO impersonation or CFO impersonation. Using to show you may not need to implement a multi-factor authentication for all your systems, but for those of high criticality, be it your operational technology on your assembly line, be it your order and client supply management database, be it your sales database, it makes sense for those most critical assets to implement multi-factor authentication. So having said that, on the next slide, I would say, what should you look for in your organization? Setting up good internal governance, ensuring that you've got the right investment level, and preparing for a cyber attack through an incident management plan are really fundamentals, and we can help you get started in those. And eventually, as we build up that resilience, start talking about more complex problems that are stumping many of us in cybersecurity, including supply chain. All right, and as a parting note, who else can you contact on the next slide? Just to clarify things, we're here for all your proactive cybersecurity needs. But should you ever have, there's other government services that you may want to be aware of. Of course, if you think you've been a victim of a crime, the RCMP is there for you. If you're receiving fraud emails, the CAPC is there for you. And if you are worried about exploitation problems, cybertip.ca is there for you. And finally, if you want to connect with us, and we hope you will, on the last slide, we have some contact information for us to find our publication and to be in touch with our team and our contact center, as Lindsay mentioned. So for that, this concludes our presentation. Thank you very much for attending with us. Lindsay, do you want to have a few parting words before we hand it back to Anjan?
No, I think just really thrilled to work with any organization between Alex and myself and any of other partnership leads we have. So please reach out to contact@cyber and you will find the right person and we will help support your needs. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Alex and Lindsay, for, I think what was actually really excellent, which is you provided a lot of solutions and a lot of tools and tips that I know those joining us here today can use. So thank you very much for joining us. There are a couple questions I want to ask. These were initially posed when Wendy was speaking, although I think actually Alex and Lindsay, you spoke to some of this, but I will ask Wendy these questions, and then Wendy, you can redirect if necessary. The first question, have you ever had to deal with a ransomware situation personally? And if so, how did you manage it?
So I haven't had to deal with one myself personally, but I have worked with a number of organizations who have come to me for help. And usually it's after they've already done everything. So after the incident is finished. And in most cases, they had to pay the ransom. And part of the reason was because they did not have backup. They didn't have patched systems. They could not live without their systems because they were very critical for their business. So again, I go back to companies and I talk to them about understanding what are your critical assets in your company ahead of time. So put that incident management plan in so you can decide yourself as an organization. One of them actually got hit twice. So it was an organization that had a ransomware and then 18 months later had a second one because they didn't implement the proper security controls. And in both cases, they did have to pay to the tune of $180,000, which it doesn't seem much, but when you're looking at millions and millions of dollars in the industry, but $180,000 to a very small company is a very large hit. And so I had worked with them to ensure that they have all their pieces in place. They may get hit again because they're now on the radar. However, the impact is a lot less and they can just shut down those systems and do backups, restore what they have on their server. So it was really putting all those controls into place to ensure that everything was ready for the next incident.
Yeah, great. Well, and I think that's what Alex was speaking to is if you have a process for doing your backups, always make sure the process is being followed, because sometimes if things fall between the cracks and you're not doing backups and there is a problem, you want to make sure those backups are current. So that's great. The other question we have here, a little bit of a longer one, but I'll read it out. If you don't have an internal IT department and you need to work with some sort of outside provider, how can cybersecurity be best managed in that situation? For example, how much support might you need? And is there some sort of industry recognized audit that can be done?
So I will take the first stab at that. And then I know Alex also has something to say. And sorry, Wendy, do you want to start?
I was actually, no, that's okay. I was actually going to say that you would probably be better to answer this one.
Sure. Okay. So Alex, I'll go first, and then I know that you'll have some words as well. So whereas I work with the health sector and the academic sector, and Alex works with the manufacturing sector and a number of other sectors, we do have somebody else that specifically works with managed service providers and managed security service providers. And so there are times where, especially, you know, in the health sector, we're working with very small entities in the biopharmaceutical industry who don't have their own internal IT security setup. And so they often say, yes, these are really great services, but we can't really utilize them. Do you mind if we work together collaboratively with our MSP? And that's when we have that conversation and we bring in our MSP lead. And sometimes we do like a three-way agreement. And so that is possible. And the other thing I will mention is that on our external facing website, there are a couple of publications that I think would be super interesting for you. One is a cybersecurity best practices when contracting with a managed service provider. So it actually gives you some insight into some of the things you should think about and some questions you should ask before engaging with a managed service provider from a security perspective. And the other one that's on there is a product that's called Cybersecurity Considerations for Consumers of Managed Services. One of the things we spoke to the health sector yesterday about, in fact, on one of these weekly community calls, is, you know, if a managed service provider is compromised, how does that affect you? And so it's a very interesting conversation. So I encourage you to have a look at those publications, and yes, still reach out to us, even if you don't think that you can benefit your organization from our services. We can certainly look at seeing how we can work collaboratively with your service provider. And Alex, I'm sure you have something to say.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of points I would add, but I think, Lindsay, like these are really excellent points. The only two things I would say is, in my experience, most organizations will at some point or another rely on a managed security service provider. Even very large organization, you know, have to make the calculation of whether they want to maintain an internal capability or they want to rely on external capabilities. Penetration testing is an example of something that very few organizations maintain an in-house capability for, because it should not be used as a recurring activity. That said, I think it's important. One of the benefits that an organization with some IT security capacity will have is the capacity to ask the right questions. Hiring an MSSP can be daunting. These guys and girls come in like with lots of experience and lots of background and start throwing frameworks around. Being able to cut through the noise and get to exactly those services that you want is, I think, something that would really bring value. And then, as Lindsay said, we do have some guidance on that, and we are working on some guidance towards managed security service providers in particular. The second thing I would say is, I understand from past work on the energy sector that, of course, there's additional considerations in the manufacturing sector because of the sensitivity around operational technology. Simply put, there are very few firms out there that understand perhaps the enclave or the protection mechanisms that you may have built in your organization around your assembly lines and your production chain, and that you may not want or feel comfortable with an MSSP running around with laptops, you know, and ball caps and plugging their laptops in your OT equipment. And that goes back to knowing how to having enough support and internal knowledge to know who to contract with and how to really ensure that the work that's being performed you're comfortable with. MSSPs can be a risk vector, and I think that's an ongoing conversation among sort of high assurance manufacturing and the electricity sector, for example. And understanding how to contract with them in a way that will minimize the risk for you is something that we can try to help with, and we've got products and we've got increasing attention being paid to in the cyber center. So excellent question. I think having some knowledge is good enough to get you started. We can support you with best practices in that sense.
Great. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex and Lindsay, for that. So a couple quick things before we release you. And one's very important, it's a poll. So just stay tuned for just a moment here. But I did want to mention our next event, Thursday, December 10th, prior to Christmas. We have Jay Davis, our very own supply chain excellence leader from NGen, joining us. The topic is building world-class supply chains through operational excellence. So I know you're going to want to join us. And don't forget, again, watch your email for our roundtable discussion next Thursday at 10 a.m. We'll send that information out shortly. Now, that said, there is a poll that we'd like you to participate in. So I'm going to bring this poll up. Appreciate it if you take a moment just to answer this. Really only one question, but a couple of sections here. It should only take you like 30 seconds. So hold on a second. Here we go. So you should see that poll on your screen. Take just a moment to review and identify the topics that you would like us, as far as next steps go, what topics, what areas could we bring forward? Appreciate your input there to select any ones that are appropriate. Just wait a moment. Reminds me of those on the screen cartoon horse races as you watch which ones go and beat the other ones as we wait. But let's give it another few moments here. We've got about half of those joining us today here live have voted. So I'll give it another minute here. Okay. All right. So there we have. I'm going to end the poll. We have our results. You can see them absolutely. There's definitely a winner there performing a risk assessment. So we're going to use this information, obviously, to not only form our future events for you, but also, as importantly, it serves as information for NGen and how we can best support you as Canadian manufacturers. So want to thank, again, Wendy Young here for joining us today, for Alex and Lindsay from, and I'll short form it here, the CCCS for joining us, and want to thank you, most importantly, for taking time out of your day to join us. I know your things are busy, but we appreciate it very much. Watch your email for upcoming events and our roundtable next week. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to any of us. Last but not least, if you are looking for training, check out ngen.ca/upskilling. Check out those programs. You can get up to 50% off if you book them through NGen. That's it for today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
Great. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you all.